Jerry Miculek, one of the greatest speed and competition shooters of all time, joins Kevin Mikulowski, editor of Concealed Carry Magazine, to discuss why firearms training for both sport and self-defense are so important for responsible gun owners like you. No matter your skill level, you'll find value in what this world-class marksman has to say about how competitive shooting can translate to concealed carry confidence, choosing and using the best tools for self-defense, secrets for speed and accuracy, and much, much more. First, a quick message brought to you by the USCCA and the Tim Kennedy Experience. Enter now to win.
Training with Tim Kennedy. What is the Tim Kennedy Experience?
Like, you will go to the best barbecue in Texas. You will have the best coffee in the state. You know, you will absolutely get the best stretchy clothes. You know, you say, this is
flexible.
like, I shoot, I fight, I train, I eat good food, I have great barbecue, I have great tacos, I have fantastic coffee, I fly in helicopters. It's a pretty cool life.
Pretty cool.
So the tip, like, if you come and you spent a couple of days with me, you're going to do all of those things.
Folks, welcome back. It's Kevin Mikulowski. I'm the executive editor of Concealed Carry Magazine, and I have a very special guest for us today. We're talking to Jerry Miculek, world record holding shooter and actually the fastest man on a trigger I've ever seen in my life, and I believe that he is the fastest man alive. Jerry, welcome to the program. Thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is just going to be a great conversation for me because I've been wanting to sit down and talk with you for a long time. I've been seeing you shoot for as long as I've been in this industry, I would imagine, about 25 years. You and I look to be about the same age, so you're doing very well there. So let's let the folks know exactly what it is you do right now. For people who aren't familiar with Jerry Miculek, what's your job and what do you do right now today?
Well, my primary competition schedule is three-gun. So we have the three-gun nationals coming up in Frostproof, Florida here in a couple of weeks. So we're getting prepped for that. Do shooting demos for Smith & Wesson, of course, the YouTube channel. So being a pro shooter now going on 30 years. So this year is going to be 30 years. So it's been a fun ride.
Oh, I can imagine. A lot of people ask me because I run Concealed Carry Magazine. I've been in the firearms publishing industry for a long time. They've asked me, it must be great to just sit around and shoot guns all day. And I always respond, no, I'm not Jerry Miculek. So you're out there on the range just about every day, I would imagine.
When I get a chance, yeah, when I get a chance, here lately is not as much as what I did before. I guess the last 10, 12 years, I was doing 21 promotions, 22 promotions a year. So we've cut back to about 12, 13. Stay home a little bit more. Family is getting more important than a trophy, you know. So you're only going to be here so long, and you got to kind of divide your time up between the two. And so I'm enjoying the time at home now a little bit, but I still shoot when I get a chance. Working on different equipment. We had a film crew here yesterday, so we filmed for 2 12-hour days. And today I'm going to go out. I sighted a pistol in this morning. I put a new optic on it for this presentation, and then I've got a couple of three-gun rifles sitting right there on the corner. I'm going to go sight those guys in just a little bit, spend some time on the 400-yard line. So what's really nice about my setup here is I can step out the door of my shop and do some chronograph work, test guns, and I can go just a couple of 100 yards and shoot in 5 different bays or do a 400-yard rifle. I'm pretty fortunate the way it's set up that keeps me entertained.
Yeah, absolutely. And, yes, it's fun, but a lot of folks don't understand sometimes that what we do is actual work. This is our job. We got to make sure we're doing it right. And we got to put everything together for folks to so that they trust us when we come out and we say, yep, we've worked it through. So
definitely. It's a constant job. Keep everything in order.
Yep. Well, I'd really like to figure out, how you got started in all this. I know you said you've been doing the professional shooting for about 30 years, but let's go back even further than that. Where did Jerry Miculek grow up, and when did you start shooting? Do you remember that first gun you shot?
I do. I was at my grandfather's place in Damon, Texas, and my dad brought out I want to say it was a Mossberg bolt-action shotgun that he borrowed from some fella he worked with. and we fired a couple of rounds on the farm. He was a farm boy, you know. He was one of four brothers. They were raised in Texas, so to him, a firearm was a tool, just like a shovel or
Yeah.
anything else. So uh, he looked at it as a tool. So he just brought out a gun. We were old enough to shoot a little bit. And we had fun with it, and then of course my interest peaked in it when I was very young. I always wanted to know what that gun was. You know how when you see something, you get curious about it. Just what is that? So TV at the time, you know, you had Rat Patrol and all the old uh, series that were on TV on a Saturday morning. So we'd watch all these war not documentaries, but series. We'd see the
Mhm.
Thompsons and all the different guns and get interested and try to figure out exactly what they were doing with them. And so you kind of get piqued with your interest, and and being in South Louisiana, it's such a hunting culture there where I came from. You always had a shotgun or a 22 rifle in your hand, so one just kind of fed off the other, and here I am now, you know, shooting for a living.
Yeah, that's it's kind of fun the way that all works out. And as you grew up, as you became an adult, and you got further and further into this, when did you start what I would call getting really serious about your shooting? Do you remember when that was, and what was your first competition, and how did you like it?
Well, I can take you back to 1972. I was a life member of the NRA then, even, but the American Rifleman that had that had the speed shooter on it, Mr. Ed McGivern, and he had shot a
Yeah.
revolver back in the day. He had shot 5 rounds at 57/100ths of a second, and it
Hmm.
was intriguing to me that someone could actually do something like that. So we started buying revolvers and playing around a little bit. And one thing led to another, and I met a gentleman by the name of Ben Ashmore. He had a Swenson 45. I don't know if you remember Arnold Swenson, custom
Yeah, I
1911
do.
guy. And he had a Swenson 45, and he was drawing out of a holster, and he had magazine pouches shooting at steel target, which I'd never seen before. And he was a member of the Miller Combat League out of Arizona, which supposedly predated Jeff Cooper's uh,
Hmm.
shooting. So he was a local. He was I take that back. He was a contractor that was working local, and I got to meet him. And he was going to organize some little. They used to call them ding dong matches. You know, he'll have fun, shoot fast with the local sheriff department. So I got interested meeting Ben and watching his equipment. So in 1976, he put on a little match, and I shot it and I won it. And you know, from there on, it was like, okay, find me another match. I want to do this. I want to do that. So we just went toward the light. You know, just wanted to
Yeah,
do bigger and better
absolutely.
things.
Uh,
A
Nothing
lot of fun.
succeeds
A lot
like
of fun.
success. Yeah, if you show up at your first match and you win it, that's typically an impetus to keep on moving and keep going forward. And I just love that you mentioned Ed McGivern. That book,
Yeah.
Fast and Fancy Revolver Shooting.
Right. Yep.
He did some great stuff, and there's some old video of him out there that's pretty decent. Old home
Yep.
movies, I guess it was that guy could really shoot. So when you said you started buying revolvers, you started moving into this. What were
Yep.
you looking for? Just going as fast as you could, or what did you want to do with those revolvers?
Well, we just wanted to see what you could do with it. You know, after reading
Mhm.
Ed's exploits, we went out and did just about everything you saw in the book. I had a
Mhm.
shooting buddy of mine that I went to grade school with. He and I used to, even before we found out about Ed McGivern, we were into the exhibition shooters. You know, Herb Parsons and Ed Topperwine and all this. So we'd spend most of our weekends 22 rifle. I mean, we were
Mhm.
shooting aerial targets. We were shooting everything with a 22 rifle. So when the
Yeah.
revolvers came into play, we had a lot of trigger time already. So we just kind of branched off into revolver shooting, and the speed aspect of it is really intriguing to me. And I shot it so poorly when I started. That kind of sparked the interest. I know I can do better than this, you know.
Yeah.
It kind of
And I
grows.
think
It
that's
kind of
some.
grows on you, you know.
Yeah, I
Just
think that's
a
something
lot of
people
fun.
really need to understand is this idea that nobody starts off being a holder of 11 world records. We all do this poorly from the start, and you just got to keep doing it if you enjoy it. So, tell me about that very first revolver you bought. What was the first gun that you bought as a revolver that you wanted to learn to shoot quickly?
Well, the first revolver I bought was a 5.5 inch Ruger single 6 22, the 22
Hmm.
Magnum cylinder. And then I progressed to a Ruger Super Blackhawk 44 Magnum, which was like too much gun. You know, I couldn't handle it. Then I bought a Model 10. That's really where I tried to obtain the speed. I was shooting a Model 10. You know, Ed shot K-frames a lot. So Model 10 is a good representation of a K-frame, very popular gun. I shot Model 10s for quite some time. Then I went to a Model 15 and a Model 28. You could get Model 28s back then in the 70s as police trade-ins, relatively cheap, like $150, $175. You couldn't wear out a Model 28. They're just built like a tank, big end frame, and
absolutely.
you could shoot it forever. I've got some with several 100,000 rounds on them, you know, and they just keep going. Good gun.
Yeah, I searched the world over for a Model 10 that was made in the year of my birth. It took me a while to find it, but I finally got a hold of one, and I snapped it
Got
up
one?
just as quickly as I could.
Yep.
So
Good
it's
gun.
that's a yeah, and you know that I think I got the 4-inch heavy barrel or something like that. It was a police trade-in somewhere, something
Yep.
that I really enjoyed. So as you started shooting, what did you focus on that helped you build up on your speed and accuracy, get faster and shoot straighter? What were the skills that you figured out you needed to learn to get better at this?
You needed exposure. I wanted to find every match I could possibly go to. And that's how you build your strong points or how you find your weak points. If you stay at a local match and you shoot against the same three or four guys, you're going to shoot the same. When you go to a bigger match and the fish get bigger, you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
You get to see
Yeah.
better equipped, more trained people on the range competing, and you learn by watching and exposing yourself to things that you can't do. Like we talked earlier about learning how to shoot a pistol. I used to gauge myself on how many times I could hit a 5-gallon bucket like 10 yards. I could hit it a couple of times out of 6, so I'm moving along pretty good, and then the 5-gallon bucket might be at 25 yards. But you always have to start somewhere. Keep your eyes open on what's ahead of you and who's doing better than you and why. So the exposure part is very important. Not being scared to go
Yeah.
there and not doing well. You still learn.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to get to. You got to not be afraid to get into a spot and not look like a champion. You're never going to be at your very first match. Well, you showed up to your first match, you said, and you won it. But getting there and actually engaging with folks and talking with them and seeing what they're doing and finding that
Right.
next level and moving up that way. That's probably some of the best advice we can give to any of the new shooters who are watching this is if you decide you have an interest in shooting, get out there and shoot. You're not going to get any better just buying a gun and leaving it in the gun safe. Absolutely get out there and try to wear that thing out. So,
right. That's one thing. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to let the expert talk now. You keep going.
No, what I think a lot of folks they might be embarrassed to go to a competition because they don't have a jersey or they don't have this or that or all the trick equipment. But what you want to realize, if you come to a competition and you say, "Hey guys, what are you guys up to?" and you're going to get so much advice, you're probably going to get overloaded. I've never seen anybody show up to a match and ask a question and get talked down to. So if you just show up, I find shooters to be very generous, and some of the people actually loan you equipment. Or show you what they're doing, take you on the side, show you their equipment, their guns. They're very proud of what they do, and they want more people into the sport. And you'll find a very positive influence if you go to a competition and say, "Hey guys, just show me what you're doing. I've never shot at IDPA or I've never shot USPSA or okay, I want to shoot 3 guns, so tell me about your 3-gun stuff." By the end of the day, you're going to have a pretty good scope of knowledge on what equipment you might need. Where I find a lot of people might mess up in the sport is they buy something and they go to the match and they find out it's not really suitable for that application, and then they've spent a lot of money needlessly. So if you just show up, or just know, well, of course, with YouTube and that all the different social platforms, it's really easy to look at equipment without actually going to a range. Usually, the top shooters are shooting that piece of equipment because it gives them an edge. So trying to put a carry gun into a speed match is not necessarily a good thing, but you have to realize that everything is very much dedicated in a competition to a narrow spectrum of application. Oh,
Jerry, you hold, I believe it is 11 world records. Which one are you most proud of?
well, 6 of those are actually certified through the NRA. We had NRA people there with their watches to make sure everything was on the even keel. But I guess the most proud one would be the 8 rounds in a second with the 627 revolver. That goes back to Ed McGivern's days, with the speed shooting. And what I wanted to do there was to establish a modern record with a modern timer, so other guys can come take a run at it. His timer was very dedicated. It was a stopwatch with a solenoid, so it was extremely hard to try to duplicate. But now with all the timers available, they're such high quality timers, you would be hard pressed not to find a timer that's exactly the same as the other. So the 8 shots in a second to me was kind of a culmination of 20 years of playing around.
So we got 8 shots in 1 second, and I gotta ask,
Yep.
there's got to be a physical limit. You can only shoot as fast as that trigger is resetting. Am I right? I mean, the trigger's got to
Right.
come all the way forward on that revolver. So, are your guns modified in any way to help you out? Do you have a stronger trigger reset spring or something like that? What kind of gun are you
No.
shooting for that?
No, it's I didn't show it in action or anything. Those guns didn't even have a trigger stop in them, so they were full, factory. What I do to my guns, and I get asked that a lot, is what's very important is the trigger return speed. That it doesn't have a hitch or a bump in it. If you feel that, after you practice a while, you get that false sensation of the trigger having reset all the way, and there's a spot in that cycle. If you pull it, you'll cycle the cylinder but not the hammer, and you'll skip around. So that's a common thing. It's like you have to really with that. To me, the quick trigger and how it is extremely important. And what you have to realize, like when Smith & Wesson sells, say, a 686, 357 Magnum, you have to sell it with the aspect of it has to fire whose ever ammunition you're going to put in it. If I buy a $10,000 gun and go put some steel case Russian-made ammo in, and expect it to fire that kind of ammunition. So when Smith & Wesson sells a gun, it's set up to shoot any ammunition that you can possibly find. But in reality, you can actually take 3 or 4 pounds off that trigger. And if you use good quality ammunition and you stick with one make or brand of primer or ammunition, you find that you have 100% reliability with a lot less trigger pull. So my guns were set up in that fashion. And I actually had a chance to shoot Ed McGivern's gun, his K-frame record gun with the little side plate on it. And his trigger felt almost exactly what I was doing. So we all came around to the same thing, but different ways. I was kind of excited about shooting that, by the way. That was quite a moment for me.
Oh, I can imagine. We just recently had a couple of stories in Concealed Carry Magazine. Our senior editor, Ed Combs, got to handle and look over the Rex Applegate guns that are still out there. One of our contributors has a couple of those. And being able to touch a piece of history like that, I'm a little bit jealous now. Both of you guys got to do this fun stuff, and I'm going to have to insert myself into some of those sorts of things. But so when we're looking at 8 rounds in a second, you said you could advance the cylinder and not advance the hammer and miss a round. I don't know that I could figure out if you miss a round looking at 8 rounds in 1 second. I've watched some of those videos and I couldn't keep, accurate count. What sort of target were you shooting at? And did you have to keep those 8 rounds on target in 1 second?
What we tried to do, if I remember right, I think it was 21 feet was Ed's distance that he did his speed shoot, and you had to cover him with your hand.
Yeah.
Size of your hand. So kind of a general target size. It's just a representation of what you can do. I think he had some groups that were better than that, a playing card, but it was a modern attempt with modern equipment, and that's what the way it came out. We did actually 3 records that day. Kind of an interesting story. And what was really interesting to me was I was never able to acquire any of these speeds before I went to the demo. I went there with not having accomplished any of my training goals, really hard on me mentally. But anyway, it worked out all right. To give you an idea, we did the 8 shots in 1 second. And what I wanted to do with the 625 revolver, of course, it's a moon clip gun, 45 caliber. It's fire 6 and then reload and shoot 6 more in under 3 seconds. And the third one was to shoot 4 targets the third record was 4 targets, 2 shots on each, and I think it was 1.06 seconds. So it was actually 3 records in one.
That is some actually pretty quick shooting. And let's talk a little bit about the training. You said that you hadn't achieved those goals in training before you got there. So maybe we call it the pressure of the moment that helped you rise to that element. But I want to talk specifically about recoil control that keeps you on target when you're doing that. So you're shooting 8 rounds in a second, and you've got 8 recoil impulses you have to deal with. How do you maintain recoil control to keep your front sight on that target that quickly?
Well, a lot of people confuse the ability to control recoil by how hard you grasp a gun or handgun. It has nothing to do with really that. It's how you lock your wrist and how you use your forearms and your elbow position on if you holding the gun tight doesn't really mean much. You got to learn to lock your wrist, and that's a totally different aspect of shooting. I call it noodling. If you shoot and the end of the barrel stays in motion in between shots, and you're just firing at any one time, you're going to have that dispersion ratio. And it doesn't take much on the end of the barrel at 8-10 yards to have a large dispersion on the target zone. So as a competitor, if you watch a truly tuned competitor shoot, you would think he's shooting extremely light ammo because the gun's not recoiling, but he's learned a technique to keep that to an extreme minimum. So it's a wrist lock and it's a shoulder lock. When I shoot fast, I'm locking almost all the way down to my waist, shoulders, back, everything. You lock it in.
Yep.
So it's
and that's what we tell people. Tell people all the time, have a solid shooting platform, and to hear you say that you're locking your muscles all the way down to your waist, through your back, that certainly gives folks who are shooting, I would say casually, they don't shoot as much as you do, some idea of what they're looking at.
Well, there's a misconception that when you shoot, you should relax and it's going to be enjoyable, and it's not. It's a job. You have to really put yourself on the job as much as you can. If I go out and shoot really 300 rounds really quick, I want to sit down for a while and rest my hands, my forearm, my back. I'm going to be pretty tensed up. And to do it on command, and you just need to understand, once you achieve it, you can go back to it because you have a feel for what it takes to make it happen. And that's one of the things that really I notice when I shoot heavy caliber guns, I tend to tense up too much, and your arms take a severe beating. Instead of letting the muzzle rise, you want to dominate it like you would a competition gun, and then you eat the recoil. But you can shoot a 44 Magnum really quick too if you put the right technique on it. But it's going to brutalize you because a lot of foot-pounds of energy has to go somewhere, and it comes back through your arms. I've got some high-speed photography of me shooting 500 Magnums, and you can see the shock wave coming up the arm. It's pretty brutal on the wrist and the elbows. It's just energy has to go somewhere.
Yep, I've told people for years that when you're carrying and shooting a gun, you can't get something for nothing. If you want a lightweight gun, you're going to feel more of that recoil. If you want to suppress some of that recoil with a heavier gun, you're going to tote that around on your belt all day long. It's and to hear you talk about that, and I would love to see some of that high-speed video of the shockwaves coming through people's arms. I think it will then tell folks exactly what's happening when they're shooting their gun during the day. So that's an amazing opportunity to be able to look and do some of that stuff. So getting back to the training, what sort of sights are you using? And I will say this as delicately as I can. Both of us are gentlemen of a certain age. Our eyes are starting to get older. What are you using? What are you using for sights that keep you on target?
I use the high vis. They make an H3. It's a tritium fired fiber optic front end rear. The older I get, the more I need that. Also, the correction on my glasses need to match what I'm trying to do at the time. So my shooting glasses, these are made by Decot. So I changed the whole lens out on the right side to the correction that I need to see the sight correctly. It's kind of Oh man, I tell you what, when you first put the whole correction on, uh, kind of make you walk in circles for a while. One eye's trying to take over from the other. So I usually, if I'm going to shoot a competition that has a metallic sight event in it, I'm going to do my glasses like 30 minutes before, so my eyes can take a set to them. And I think one of the problems the older guys make, and I've had that, I did the same thing, so I kind of give you a heads up on that, is that you want to put too much correction, make the front sight too sharp, and when you do that, you lose target definition so much. It's like shooting at a ghost. There's no edges to it, the target. So there's a compromise between how well you're going to see the sight and how well you're going to see the target. So if you go into your optometrist, I'm kind of lucky to where I can actually bring a gun in, and he'll put the diopters in front of me, and I can pick the right one, or he'll come out to the range and do it. If you don't have that, you can just take your ruler and picture a point on it to where your front sight would naturally be if you had your full extension, and go into your optometrist and ask him to put the diopters in there where you can get not an exactly sharp sight, but enough to make to call a shot with. That unfortunately is where we are when you get up into our age group.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see my eyes changing all the time. And that speaks a lot to the fact that we need more people in the gun culture, like going to the optometrist and saying, I want to shoot my pistol perfectly. This is what I need. I would imagine that
Right.
there's a lot of big city optometrists who wouldn't know what the heck we were talking about. And I love living in a small town because my optometrist is also a duck hunter, so he understands shotgunning and stuff like that. So I have a real good relationship with Dr. Gowerke. So, yeah. All right,
helps.
let's. Yeah, absolutely. Seeing the sights and seeing the target absolutely do help, folks. So you're talking to a world record holder there who says he wants to see his sights clearly. You got to understand that that's something we need to do when we're shooting. We're putting rounds on target. This is a man who put 8 rounds downrange in 1 second on target that he could cover with his hand to set a world record. So we're talking to a true expert here. But Jerry, I want to shift gears now from competition shooting and talk about, do you carry a gun every day? Do you have an everyday carry gun that you keep with you for self-defense? And how do you train to make sure that you're not in competition mode when you're out there on the street every day?
That's a broad statement right there. My everyday when I get up in the morning, I'll clamp on an open carry gun. It's going to be an M&P compact. It's a clip-on Sparling holster with a paddle. Of course, you just clip it right on and you're ready to go. That's with me pretty much all day long. If I go to town or something, bring a shield or a J-frame, either one. It depends what the pants I have on at the time. What's going to feel it the better when I put it in my pocket. I usually just drop it in my pocket. So that's usually my options. But there's always a gun in the automobile here. Louisiana, it's very easy and it's accepted, and you don't have to have a permit to have a firearm in your automobile. In Louisiana, of course, it's an extension of your home, and you can carry concealed in your automobile. But once you exit, of course, you either have to have a permit or open carry. So, kind of lucky here in Louisiana. So I've always have something handy. I never really want to be without an arm's reach of something to take care of the job. If I don't have something like that, I'm not really going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway.
I tell people all the time, if you're more than 3 seconds away from your firearm, you are unarmed. So you got to keep it with you. And I like that arm's reach comment, something that you can reach out and grab and get a hold of. And when you're talking about defensive calibers and stuff like that, you're hanging around near 38 special or 9mm or something like that. What do you like to carry for personal defense?
The 9mm cartridge is so well engineered now to be effective. Like the Hornady 135 with their flex tip technology, the FBI has adopted it. I've shot it through different test mediums here on the range. It works out really good. That's my everyday round that I carry. If it's in a revolver, I'm going to carry the flex tip, either 357 Magnum or plus V in a 38. I feel good with it. It's you have to realize a small handgun is like that is just to get you out of trouble. If you know trouble's coming, that's not what you're going to go to, but it's something handy. Buy you a little bit of time, maybe. So maybe not. But anyway, there's always the classic debate about 45, 9 mil, and all this. It all ends up to what you do with the bullet at the time. If you're fortunate enough or you're well trained enough to put it where you need it, I think a 9 is going to carry the moment. It seems to work relatively well. It's inexpensive to train with, and that's another thing you want to realize. You want to get out there. If you're going to carry something, you got to get out there and play with it. You got to understand it. Shoot it weak hand, strong hand. A lot of guys and they want to specialize their equipment so much that they actually take the product to a point to where it's not reliable.
Mhm.
That's the number one function of a carry gun. It has to go bang every time. Doesn't have to be the most accurate or the prettiest gun, but it has to go bang every time. And if you're going to use it for actually a defensive situation, the distances are going to be very small. And if it shoots 6 inches at 25 yards, that's probably not a problem. Because at 25 yards, I can run, I can go somewhere else. I don't have to engage. That's the whole idea of having a tool, is that you can apply it there's most situations. Hopefully, you're not gonna apply it. It has to go bang every time.
Yeah, that's what I talk to people about, is that accuracy is negotiable. That reliability is not. If you need to pull your gun out and you're going to use it, I tell people, don't pull your gun unless you know that you're in a life-threatening situation, and then that gun definitely needs to go bang, and probably needs to go bang at least 2 or 3 times. So you want to make sure that it functions every time. And the way you talked about it, Jerry, was just great. That's what people, especially new gun owners, especially first-time shooters or folks who decide that they're going to get into this, need to understand. You're right. A 6-inch group at 25 yards isn't really going to help you in a self-defense situation. You need to get your gun out and on target in I would hope under 2 seconds at less than 3 yards, and be able to put those rounds on that person and then get yourself moving, because you don't want to be standing around when the fight's happening. You want to be trying to get out of there. So let's talk a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk a little bit about your favorite gun of all time. I have watched videos of you shooting everything from 50 caliber rifles, down to tiny little pistols. What is the gun that you really enjoy shooting the most? If God forbid you had to pick one gun, what would be the one gun that you would keep to shoot because you like shooting it so much?
Well, that's a hard question. I kind of went through that the other day, and we're going to make actually a video on it. I think it would probably be a 327 5-inch end frame Smith & Wesson 38 357 Magnum. Yep. It's a lightweight gun, but it's so flexible in the caliber and what you can do with the caliber. It's pretty endless. You can shoot there's a zillion different loads in 357 Magnum and 38 Special, and you can do anything with it. And it's light enough to carry every day. So when you ask me, if I really want to enjoy shooting a gun, I would want a heavier gun, but I wouldn't want to carry a heavy gun. You kind of mentioned that earlier. Oh, guy, I just had a guy text me, said, "What would you advise me to carry?" I said, "You have to realize it's going to be on your person every day. And if it's heavy and it's easy to shoot on the range, it's probably not going to be portable enough for you to hang it on your hip every day, because you really find out once you live with it how hard it is to live with a full-size gun, especially a steel frame. It doesn't matter whose manufacturer, it's going to be heavy. So there's a reality moment in all of that. So you have to compromise. And that 327, a 5-inch gun like that, is a pretty good compromise for weight and horsepower and how many rounds you have and what you can do with it. So nice package.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. When people are coming to us for recommendations, I always ask a whole bunch of questions. What are you going to do with the gun? Where do you want it? Where might you even carry it? And I've seen a lot of people point young ladies toward really tiny little 380 pistols. That's going to be the girl's gun or something like that. And personally, I don't like shooting a tiny little 380. That thing jumps around in my hand, and there's not a whole lot of, I'm not going to spend all day at the range shooting a 380 and say that I liked it. That's absolutely not it. The first 380 that I ever purchased was a Beretta Model 84, and I bought it specifically because it had that big fat grip and it filled up my hand, and I knew that a lightweight gun is going to jump a little bit more. So talk to the viewers a little bit about if you're going to make a recommendation. If somebody comes to you for a let's call it advice about buying a gun, what are the first couple of questions that you're going to ask these people, and what do you want to know before you tell somebody which gun to buy?
What's the primary function? If you're going to put it in a nightstand, or you're going to carry it in your automobile, or you're going to carry it on your person. And the other question I was going to ask is, how much training time are you going to put on it?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to stage a firearm, I want it to be the biggest, heaviest I can get. But if I'm going to carry it, there's a compromise. You have to understand there's going to be a compromise. Everybody loves a full size 1911 or a full size Glock or whatever, Smith & Wesson M&P. But when you carry it every day, it's got to be a compromise there. So a pistol versus a revolver situation is the other aspect of course. I always try to steer people to a revolver if they're going to put minimum time into training, because there's minimum that you need to do. What's great about a revolver is the ammunition doesn't function a gun. So it kind of cuts your malfunctions into a very small spectrum. Whereas a pistol, you have to understand, if I have a malfunction, what do I do? What's the requirements of this? And when it's in a defensive situation, you're not going to have a broad spectrum of time to apply it to the target. So you're either going to be in a fight or you're not. So you have time to clear a malfunction. Or you're going to take care of your gun enough to keep it in shape. Will it function weak hand, strong hand, upside down, sideways, shoot it through a coat pocket? Am I going to pull it out of my pocket and it's going to be so full of debris that I can't use it? Those kind of questions. It's just basic. How much do you know about what you're going to do with it?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about revolver malfunctions. We hear this all the time, that revolvers never malfunction. And I would be willing to guess that you've shot revolvers enough to have some sort of malfunction somewhere along the way. So let's tell people what can possibly go wrong with a revolver if you're shooting it. I know there's not many things, mainspring malfunction or something like that, but what can go wrong with a revolver that can stop you from being in the fight?
Probably I've actually saw a case separate and go with the bullet in between the barrel and the cylinder. I've only seen that one time. I've been exposed to millions of rounds in a revolver. That was my little brother did that, of all things. It might have been a bad reload or a case that was defective. About the biggest thing that I see with the revolver is that you let it build up debris between the extractor and the cylinder. So when you close it, it gets so tight that it's really hard to turn. And that's usually caused by having lubrication in the wrong spot and not ejecting your spent cases straight up and down. But other than that, a revolver, if it's properly tuned, it would be an issue of if I got something into the action, if something got into the trigger group or into the hammer. That's why a hammerless gun is so nice to carry. It lessens the possibility of something getting into the action and locking it up. The ejector rod can unscrew, jam in the cylinder, not necessarily in the firing rotation, but when you go to open it. I saw a guy the other day on the internet, and he was showing people how to open it with a hammer. And I'm thinking, man, this is not the thing to do. If you go to open your cylinder and it has a little bit of hesitation, but you want to realize that you can actually go in the front of that ejector rod and push that detent forward, then open it. You don't have to hit it with a hammer, because once you hit it with a hammer, you're going to bend things. It's a very finely tuned instrument, and you don't want to ever hit a firearm with a hammer. That was like the worst piece of advice I think I've ever heard. So.
Yeah, and on the internet we get all sorts of great ideas, and I will do the air quotes, great ideas. We don't want to be hitting the cylinder or any place on our revolver with a hammer. So you mentioned the words "if your revolver is properly tuned," and tell folks a little bit about what that means and what it takes to have a revolver properly tuned.
Well, as the gun comes out of the box, it's 100% functional. So what I do to my guns is I want to induce like 10,000 rounds worth of wear on it, so it's really smooth. Unless you want to go out and shoot 10,000 rounds, you can take a set of stones and a spring kit, and you can make it into a very smooth finished product in just a couple of hours if you do it right. If you do it wrong, you can ruin it. Also, I've seen a lot of revolvers, especially Smith & Wessons, where guys got on it with a stone, and they stone it to a point to where the hammer stroke is actually shortened. So the hammer starts to fall before the cylinder is completely indexed, and they put the wrong springs in them, and they make it so good it's almost useless. So you got to be
Yeah.
careful when you buy a second hand gun that somebody didn't give it the wrong kind of treatment, and you want to understand what to look for if it's in time, or if someone's got in there and monkeyed around with the parts and stoned it to where you might have to replace the hammer or the trigger, especially on the single action. Very easy to destroy the single action notch on the Smith & Wesson.
Yeah, we don't want people pulling apart their hammers, pulling apart the internals of the gun, and grinding or filing or stoning or whatever out there without at least the guidance of a competent gunsmith, or at least an understanding
Yeah,
of some mechanical ability of what they're going to be doing inside there. Those internal parts truly are machined to exacting tolerances, and timing. We're looking at making sure that cylinder is up and locked and in the right position just as the hammer falls underneath it. And on a fighting gun, a 5-shot or 6-shot revolver cylinder, we're going to be shooting 2-3 rounds really quickly. We want to make sure that works properly. So, thinking about carrying a revolver as a defensive gun, you talked a little bit about a hammerless revolver. So you're talking about the shrouded hammer, or are you talking about a bobbed hammer? Just let folks know the difference of what those two things are and how we're going to keep the dirt out of that action.
okay. A truly hammerless gun would be like a 642 and stuff that doesn't have a hammer at all. The whole idea is the back of the frame is covered. And I can't think of a situation in a defensive situation where I'm going to cock the hammer. Why would you go single action? You're not going to do it. If it has a hammer spur on it, and you go to pull it out of your holster or your pants pocket, unfortunately, if you don't have a holster, you're going to snag everything between the time you draw it till you get on target. So to me, the hammer on the revolver is actually a negative thing, because if I miss a grab on the revolver and the hammer's down in the web of my hand where I can't pull the trigger, well, I'm not being effective. Truly a hammerless gun like a 642, you can get your hand up higher and you can fire it even though your hand is in the wrong position. So to me, a hammer means nothing on a defensive gun. I don't even want it on there. It shouldn't even be an option if you're going to consider it for a defensive tool. I got to try to make a precision shot with a revolver in a defensive situation. I can't really think of that application. It's going to be so small that I really shouldn't be shooting at it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. We're looking at close and fast shooting, and nobody should be taking the time. I mean, you're adjusting your grip, to cock that hammer. You're making what I would consider a huge waste of time. We want to get this fight over with quickly, and perfect example, like you said, pulling it out of the pocket or out of the holster. If that hammer spur snags up on your clothing, you're going to have some real trouble like that. So let's talk a little bit about, I know that there's probably a lot of folks, I've been warned as we talk this, that I should remember a lot of the people watching aren't going to be as well versed in firearms as you and I, but let's talk a little bit about some of the loads that you use in the 38 Special or 357 Magnum area that we're talking about for self-defense. What kind of loads do you use on the target range, and then do you carry over the same thing in your defensive guns?
Well, that's a really good question. And in a revolver, we're all guilty about shooting different ammunition on practice because it's cheaper. And then when you put your plus P or your plus P plus or your 357 Magnum loads in it, the recoil sensation and the point of impact is going to be totally different. So I always try to advise people, if they have a carry gun, they want to shoot at least 100 rounds of what they're going to carry, especially in a pistol, and make sure the gun is going to function. The magazines are compatible with the ammunition. A revolver is a little bit more flexible in that application because it doesn't function the gun. So it affords you the possibility of training with lighter ammo, being accustomed to the gun, and then switching to your carry ammo. But you always want to shoot at least 100 rounds of what you're going to carry. That way you're going to be familiar with the impulse, where it hits on a target, and if your gun even likes it or not. It might not like it, and it might have a little bit of a malfunction rate or whatever, too much flash or whatever. You want to go out and shoot it under low light conditions as much as you do under lighted conditions, and because that's probably where you're going to use it. It's going to be low light. You're not going to see much of the sights. You're going to have a flash. You want to be accustomed of what the possibilities are. what's going to be distracting to you. And what you want to realize too, guys, is like when competition. When I go to a competition, I usually figure in about a 20% default of my skill set to the stage of fire. You hardly ever are going to be better than you are when you relax practicing. So,
Yeah.
If you're surprised, you're going to be a default of probably 40% or 50%. And you have to be aware that you don't want to have that false expectation of I can do this in this amount of time. Well, you can do it on the range when you're ready for it, but if it's when you're not ready and it happens, what time element it is. You don't want to have that false expectation because I have this in my pocket. I can go anywhere and be everything and everybody. So, you know what I'm saying? You have to really
Yeah.
realize the time element. Time
Mhm.
element is everything in competition, and it's also the same thing in personal carry. Is you have to realize what is your distance, what is your safety factor. Is it within arm's reach, or is it in the bottom of my purse, under my makeup kit, or whatever you're carrying? If you're a lady, and if you're a guy, and it's deep in your pocket, and you got your keys on top of it, or whatever. What time it takes me to get it out and be functional as a firearm. So, things to consider.
Yeah. Would you consider, would you tell people to get involved in competition as a means of, I don't know, getting ready for defensive shooting, adding that little bit of extra pressure? I mean, when someone gets behind you with a timer and says, on the beep, you got to go, you got to perform. Do you think that helps folks who are getting ready for personal defense?
Well, that's a thing. Some trainers will tell you competition really adds no value to a defensive use of a firearm, and the other half will tell you it'll be really good, but it's going to teach you to stand in one spot and shoot where you should be moving. But the thing you have to realize, if you can't do it at a local match when you're having fun, what's the chances of you doing it when you're extremely stressed and you're not trained and you have never presented yourself to a pressure level like you're going to experience, like if you're going to need your handgun. So I always say go to a match. I've seen I've seen people degrade really quick. I'm not going to be picking on police officers, but police officers are trained and I have to qualify, and they do this more than any civilian usually does. So I had a guy out on the range and we were shooting a falling plate rack, and he was shooting a pistol. He'd come across, six plates, six plates. I said, man, you're doing that really good. He said, yeah, this is pretty good. I can do this. And I said, I'll tell you what, let me get my rig going. I'm going to race you. I'm going to get on this side of the plate rack and you shoot this side of the plate rack. We're going to see who can knock the targets down the quickest. And I'm not picking on the guy. I just wanted to show him something. So when I got up on the line with him, his hit ratio dropped to about 50%,
Mm-hmm.
and we
And
shot a few strings, and he kind of looked at me and said, man, I said, the difference now, you have an expectation of a performance, and you put that stress level on, and that's a very simple stress level that you can duplicate. So if you don't go out in that environment and find a stress level to train at, you're not really training. You might own a gun, but you're not really training to use it well. So you always have to put yourself in a situation that you haven't been in before. And that's what's really fun about the action games. You might be sitting at a table like this, pick up a gun, or you might have to shoot under the bench, out of a window, weak hand, strong hand, and it's a practical use of a firearm. Is it the end all practice? Not really, but it's a good start. It gives you time on the trigger under different shooting conditions, under stress, and that's what you're looking for. Is what you can do under stress, not what I can do when I'm having fun with my buddy on the range. So different.
yeah, absolutely. I tell people all the time that you're not going to rise to that level of performance. You're going to fall back to your lowest level of training and what you've become proficient at your lowest level of training. That's why I really suggest that people put a timer on something that they're doing. Or like you said, I don't know how terrified I would be if you walked up to me on the range and said, "Come on, we're going to have a speed shooting contest, Kevin." Nope, I'm not even going to be able to keep up. So that's and did this fellow who was shooting at the plate rack, did he know who you were? Did he know what you did for a living?
Right. Yeah. But that's the point. The point being is you have to get out of your comfort zone. If you don't really train, like if you have never been exposed to force on force training or scenarios that put you in the forefront, puts the pressure directly on you, because that's what's going to happen. If you're going to actually need something, you're not going to, like you said, arise to this great level of performance. You're going to always default. And as a professional, I want to know what my default level is at that level of stress or that level of competition. So when I go out and train, I can train to be above it, because you will default. I mean, very seldom in my life have I shot better under stress than I did without stress. But as a competitor, I have to know how to manage it, how to go through it. If you're having a bad day on the range, say I'm shooting a competition and I shot the first or second stage and it was really terrible, I have to self-diagnose my problems. So when I come back for the next stage, I can come back and not default even more. So I have to realize, okay, I'm holding the gun a little bit loose, so I'm a little bit I'm not quite following through on that sight picture, and I'm a little bit sloppy here, and I'm not standing right. Got my head down instead of up. Where are my shoulders? So I have to self-diagnose that, or I'm not going to be competitive. And if you don't ever expose yourself to that stress level, you don't know what to do. You just do
Yeah, I
it,
think
like you were saying. But you're not effective. Not
yeah,
effective.
you're absolutely right. And all of that stuff, all of that self-diagnosis, that comes from getting some good quality training, but then shooting enough so that you understand what you're doing wrong when you start to make those mistakes. I mean, I have gone through a couple of different 500 or 600 round shooting courses and realized that by the end of those 500 rounds, I'm starting to drop some rounds low just because my arms might be getting tired or I need to take a rest or something like that. All of this, I guess, excellence comes from experience. You have to shoot more in order to shoot better.
You have to burn a lot of ammo. That's what I'll tell a guy really quick is get a good functional gun and spend your money on ammo. You don't need all the gadgets and gadgets. You need a good functional gun and a lot of range time. You're going to get a lot more out of $100 worth of ammo than a real shiny mag release or something. So put your money in
And
ammo and range time.
that's absolutely perfect. And Jerry, we're kind of running out of time here. And I think that is a great place to stop. Folks, buy ammo. Absolutely. Spend the money on the ammo and get the training. Jerry, I really want to thank you. If there's any parting words of wisdom that you want to share with the viewers here, you can give them to us now. But this has been a great hour and I've had so much fun. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us.
Okay, you're more than welcome. One thing I want to say is safety on the range. I can't stress that enough. Safe gun handling is always good gun handling. So it's always the empty gun that gets you in trouble. Flag all your long guns. The same thing on your pistols. A flag is a wonderful thing. If you're not using it, it should be flagged. Should have a chamber flag. And keep your finger off the trigger till you're ready to shoot. Know what your target is and what's beyond it. So basic safety rules always.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry. I truly appreciate your time. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I hope we get to do it again sometime. You take care of yourself and stay safe out there, okay?
More than welcome.
Training with Tim Kennedy. What is the Tim Kennedy experience?
Like, you will go to the best barbecue in Texas. You will have the best coffee in the state. You will absolutely get the best stretchy clothes. This is
Flexible.
like, I shoot, I fight, I train, I eat good food, I have great barbecue, I have great tacos, I have fantastic coffee, I fly in helicopters. It's a
Rainbow.
pretty cool
Yeah,
life.
pretty cool.
So if you come and you spent a couple of days with me, you're going to do all of those things.